We were talking about the last class about covalent bonding, right? And today we are moving with this chapter again, covalent bonding. It is actually what? It is actually the mutual sharing of electrons between two similar or dissimilar or different, you can say that, non-metals, right? So we were talking about some examples like for suppose CF3Cl. So this is one of the example of covalent bonding. You can see this. We have three different non-metals over here. They are combined together, so they are forming covalent bond. So definitely there should be something like sharing of electrons, right? So if you see over here, bacho, we have one carbon and three fluorine and one chlorine. You need to keep remember the one which requires the greater number of electrons should be in the center, right? The one which requires the greatest number of electrons should be in the center. So you can see this carbon is from group number 4. Group number 4 means it has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, right? Fluorine and chlorine, they both are from group number 7, so they have 7 electrons in the outermost shell. So they want 4 more electrons and they required only 1 electrons, right? So you can see this, that carbon requires greater electrons in the last shell. So carbon should be in the center, right? And on all 4 corners, we have what? The different elements like fluorine and chlorine. So we know that carbon has 4 electrons in the outermost shell. So each electrons will be shared with each element or each atom of element fluorine and chlorine. And we know that fluorine and chlorine both are from group number 7. So they just want 1 electron. So the number of electrons required are actually the number of electrons share. So इनको एक ही चाहिए तो बस ये एक ही share करेंगे, and the rest of 6 will be outside. So these are like this: 1 share and the 6 will be outside. 1 share and the 6 will be outside. 1 share and the 6 will be outside. Is that right, everyone? So it will form like carbon, 3 single bonds with fluorine and 1 single bond with chlorine. Is that clear, everyone?
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Yes, sir.
This is what we talked about in the last class, right? Now let's talk about something. You need to keep remember this, not only 1 electron from each side, even 2 electrons from each side can be shared, right? For suppose right now you see this, that this molecule saying that a carbon requires 4 electrons. So 4 different atoms share each electrons with carbon, and in this way carbon share their all 4 electrons, right? But even carbon can share 2 electrons with single atom. Just look at over here. For suppose if we have carbon dioxide, right, we have 1 carbon and 2 oxygens. So the carbon will be in the center and 2 oxygens are like this, right? So you can see this carbon has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, right? Carbon has 4 electrons in the outermost shell. अब जब एक एलिमेंट है उसके आखिरी शेल में 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स हैं, उसको 4 के 4 शेयर करना पड़ेंगे because it wants to be 8 electrons in the outermost shell. जब उसके आखिरी में 4 हैं तो 4 के 4 शेयर करेगा तो 8 हो जाएंगे, ठीक है ना? 4 हैं, 4 के 4 शेयर करेगा 8 हो जाएंगे, ठीक है ना? अभी उसके पास सिर्फ 2 ही ऑक्सीजन है. अब 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन कैसे शेयर करे? 2 ही ऑक्सीजन है, तो 2 एक ऑक्सीजन के साथ, 2 दूसरे ऑक्सीजन के साथ. So a carbon will share 4 electrons like this, 2 इधर, 2 इधर. Is that clear, बच्चों?
Yes, sir. Here, sir.
ना ऑक्सीजन की अगर आप बात करोगे तो ऑक्सीजन ग्रुप 6 का है. ग्रुप 6 का मतलब उसके आखिरी शेल में 6 इलेक्ट्रॉन होंगे. द वन व्हिच इज इन ग्रुप नंबर 6, दैट मींस इसके आखिरी शेल में 6 इलेक्ट्रॉन होंगे. अब आखिरी शेल में 6 इलेक्ट्रॉन है तो कितने और चाहिए? 2 और चाहिए, तो 2 ही शेयर होंगे. तो 6 में से 2 शेयर होंगे, 4 बाहर रहेंगे. सो इट इज ऑक्सीजन जिसके 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स बाहर रहेंगे और 2 वो शेयर करेगा. इसी तरह इसमें भी ऑक्सीजन में 2 शेयर करेगा, 4 बाहर रहेंगे. सो इन दिस वे यू कैन सी दैट कार्बन इज एक्चुअली फॉर्मिंग डबल बॉन्ड विद ऑक्सीजन, मींस sharing 2 electrons in one time, right? अगर एक दफा में आप देखें तो कार्बन एक ऑक्सीजन के साथ 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन शेयर कर रहा है. Is that clear, बच्चों?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Same as
All
it is
clear,
if you talk all about oxygen gas. If you talk about oxygen gas, so we know that oxygen is also from group number 6. It has 6 electrons in the outermost shell. So 1 2 3 4 5 6. अब ऑक्सीजन को चाहिए हैं 2. जब इसको 2 चाहिए तो it must share 2 electrons with the other oxygen atom, right? So अगर दूसरा ऑक्सीजन एटम होगा तो उसके पास भी 6 electrons ही होंगे, तो 2 शेयर हो जाएंगे. So in this way oxygen will form double bond or sharing 2 electrons from each side in a molecule. Is that right, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you show me your skills now? A skill test for you, right? You need to show me CS2. You need to show me to draw a C2H4 and N2H2. Just do this. Draw these molecules and send me so I can check you are getting my points, right? I'm waiting for your WhatsApps. देखिए बच्चों, whenever you talk about CS2 and C2H4 and N2H2, so you need to draw the structure like this. First of all, we have one carbon, and we have two sulfurs. So it is like this, right? And we need to know this, that carbon के पास 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन होते हैं, 4 के 4 शेयर करने हैं इसको. So 2 इधर, 2 इधर. सल्फर के पास 6 इलेक्ट्रॉन होते हैं, उन्हीं 6 में से 2 शेयर करेगा और 4 बाहर रहेंगे. ठीक है भाई? This is what carbon disulfide, CS2. When each element and each atom of each element is sharing actually 2 electrons over there, so it should be like 2 lines over there. Then C2H4, 2 carbons like this, and each carbon should have 2 H's like this. Now we know that carbons have 4 electrons. Each carbon has 4 electrons, and they must need to share all the electrons. तो एक यहाँ हाइड्रोजन के साथ, एक यहाँ, अब 2 कहाँ जाएंगे, 2 अंदर शेयर होंगे. एक यहाँ, 2 कहाँ जाएंगे, अंदर. तो एक कार्बन के, दोनों कार्बन के 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स हो गए. देन हाइड्रोजन का एक ही इलेक्ट्रॉन होता है, तो इस तरह शेयर कर लेगा. ठीक है बच्चों? So it will be carbon के दरमियान डबल बॉन्ड है, तो it will be 2 lines, and with hydrogens it has a single bond like this, right? And if you talk about N2H2, so it will be 2 N's and 1 H over here, 1 H over here. So one nitrogen should have 5 electrons in the outermost shell because it is from group number 5, and it must need 3 electrons. So 3 ही शेयर करेगा, 2 शेयर नहीं करेगा. तो 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. इसका भी 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. और हाइड्रोजन के पास एक ही होता है, तो it will be like this. So it is nitrogen double bond, and hydrogen over here and hydrogen over there. Is that clear, every one of you?
Yes, sir.
Challenge. Now it's not enough, and it is not ending over here. Even each atom can share 3 electrons at a time. Like in nitrogen, if you talk about nitrogen, so it will be like each nitrogen has 5 electrons in the outermost shell, and they want 3 more electrons, right? They want 3 more electrons. So whenever they join with the other nitrogen atom, so they share 3 electron each. So it will be like nitrogen and nitrogen triple bond, each atom sharing its 3 electrons. Is that clear, bacho?
Yes,
sir. Now, it's your time to show your skills, right? A skill test. Can you draw C2H2 and HCN? Just do it quick and send me the picture so I can check. You can do this. These 2 examples, so how can we solve these 2 examples? Asra, you can see over here on the diagram. I'm drawing the diagram of C2H2. We have 2 carbons. That's right. We have 2 carbons, and we have 2 hydrogens. That's right. Right. We know that the center one are carbons, and these are hydrogens, right? So hydrogen has only 1 electron to share, right? So a single carbon can maximum share 1 electron with them because it is a mutual sharing of electron, right? So if the hydrogen is sharing 1 electron, so carbon can maximum share 1 electron with hydrogen because it is a mutual sharing. The same number of electrons shared from both sides, right? Now, carbon has 4 electrons in the outermost shell, and it wants to complete its octet, right? If a carbon wants to complete their octet, so they must have 8 electrons in the outermost shell. And if they have 4, so when they share 4 of them, then definitely 4 and 4 will become 8 electrons, right? तो अभी कार्बन के पास 4 इलेक्ट्रॉन हैं, 4 में से एक हाइड्रोजन के साथ शेयर किया, बचे 3, वो 3 के 3 अंदर शेयर हो जाएंगे इस तरह. It will be like this, right? So each carbon sharing 3 electron with the other carbon and 1 electron sharing with hydrogen. So it will be C2H2. And if you talk about HCN, so I told you the one which requires the greater number of electrons will be in the center. So carbon requires the greatest number of electrons, 4. So it should be in the center. All the time, carbon should be in the center because it is the maximum number of electrons that any element requires, right? Then hydrogen is here, nitrogen is here. So it is HCN. And we know that hydrogen can maximum share 1 electron with carbon, and carbon, the rest of 3 electron will share with nitrogen, and the rest of 2 will be outside. So it will be 1 electron with hydrogen and 3 electrons with nitrogen. So it will be HCN. Is that right, every one of you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now let's talk about some physical properties of covalent compounds, right? We are going to write this in contrast with ionic compounds, right? If you talk about ionic compounds, bacho, so we wrote some physical properties of ionic compounds in the last class. If you talk about covalent compounds, so we need to talk about these together, right? What about ionic compounds? बच्चों हमने क्या लिखा था ionic compound की पहली physical property? They are mostly what? They are mostly बच्चों?
Solid at room temperature.
Yes, they are solids mostly, right? They are solids. If you have experience of NaCl in your house, which is a common salt, it is solid, right? And covalent compounds are mostly liquids. They are mostly liquids and gases, mostly, not all the time. Mostly they are liquids and gases. Sugar is also covalent compound, but it is not liquid, it is solid. Some of the time they are solid as well, but most of the time they are liquids and gases. Then definitely when they are solid, so they have electrostatic force of attraction, which is very strong. So they have high melting and boiling point. So they have high melting point and boiling point. But in contrast, covalent compounds have low melting and boiling point. So they have low melting and boiling point. For example, if you want to write example, just for the comparison, you can say that NaCl is one of the ionic compound. It has 801 degrees centigrade or Celsius melting point. Melting point is इसका ये पहले ये melt होगा उसके बाद जाके boil होगा तो ये melting point is इसका. If you talk about the melting point of water, so it's almost what? It is 0 degrees Celsius, right? Or it is a melting point. You can see the comparison कि कितना weak हो सकता है. जी बेटे.
सर ये जिस तरह ये सोडियम क्लोराइड जो है तो इसके मेल्टिंग और बॉइलिंग पॉइंट्स याद करने की जरूरत है या फिर नहीं?
नहीं, बिल्कुल याद करने की जरूरत नहीं. आई एम राइटिंग ओवर हियर जस्ट फॉर द कंपैरिजन, ताकि आपको थोड़ा आइडिया हो कि कितना कंपैरिजन हो सकता है. ठीक है, याद करने की बिल्कुल जरूरत नहीं.
और सर सोडियम क्लोराइड की जो बॉइलिंग पॉइंट है वो क्या होगा?
वो ऑलमोस्ट डेफिनेटली मोर देन 1000 होना चाहिए. इट विल बी समवेयर 1200 or 1400 somewhere, right?
Okay, sir.
Then they have high densities and low densities as well, but we are talking about solubility. They are soluble in water. Whenever you talk about ionic compounds, so they are soluble. They are soluble in water, right? They are soluble in water because they have ions, right? They are soluble in waters, but when you talk about covalent compounds, so they are insoluble in water, right? Most of them are insoluble in water. Not all the time. Mostly they are insoluble in water, right? Then if you talk about the conduction of electricity, bacho, so we know that ionic compounds can conduct electricity in molten and aqueous state, right? So you can say that they can conduct electricity. They can conduct electricity.
सारे ionic compounds soluble in
most of the time we are talking about general properties right now. So if you talk about salts, some of the salts like AgCl, AgBr, AgI are not soluble in water. That they are exceptional cases, right? So most of the time they are soluble in water, right?
Okay, sir.
Same as it is, they can conduct electricity in molten and aqueous state. अब आप कह सकते हैं sir, calcium carbonate is insoluble in water. Definitely it is not going to dissolve in water. So should it conduct electricity in aqueous state? इसका कोई रीजन बनता ही नहीं है. ठीक है ना, मतलब एक चीज जब पानी के अंदर इनसॉल्युबल है, जब वो सॉल्युबल ही नहीं होगी तो एक्वा सॉल्यूशंस में वो आयंस कैसे प्रोड्यूस करेगी? जब वो आयंस प्रोड्यूस नहीं करेगी तो डेफिनेटली वो इलेक्ट्रिसिटी कंडक्ट भी नहीं करेगी, बट डेफिनेटली मॉल्टन में करेगी, राइट? They are insulators. Is that clear, every one of you?
Clear.
Yes, sir. Everyone?
Clear, sir. Clear.
Everything clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, one very important thing is about their structures and their bondings. So you need to keep remember this. If you talk about the structure of ionic compound, for suppose you have NaCl. So you need to know this, that NaCl is the structure of like this. The structure of NaCl should be like this. It is giant ionic lattice. It is giant ionic lattice. The name of the structure of ionic compound is giant ionic lattice. Any ionic compound, any. और सपोज अगर मैं इसको NaCl की जगह MgO सेलेक्ट कर लूं, तो फॉर एग्जांपल अगर यहाँ पर M मैग्नीशियम है, फॉर एग्जांपल मैग्नीशियम माइनस ग्रीन एंड येलो इज ऑक्साइड आयन, राइट? सो इसके चारों तरफ आपके पास 6 साइड्स पर ऑक्सीजन होगा, ठीक है ना? और इन ऑक्सीजन के 6 साइड्स पर आपके पास क्या होगा? मैग्नीशियम होगा, ठीक है ना? इसी तरह इट इज लाइक दिस ऑल द टाइम. यहाँ पर आपके पास देखें, इसके 6 साइड्स होती हैं और आपके पास हर साइड पर आपके पास क्या होगा? मैग्नीशियम होगा. So each positive is attracted by 6 negative and each negative is attracted by 6 positive. This is what ionic compound means. They are having giant ionic lattice. You need to remember the name of the structure for ionic compounds. It is very important for 1 mark, right? Then if you talk about the structure of covalent compounds, so for suppose if you're talking about simple carbon dioxide and for suppose in CH4, so just look at over here.
जो है डिस्कवर किस तरह हुआ है, मतलब माइक्रोस्कोप के अंदर देखा या फिर किस तरह?
नहीं, माइक्रोस्कोप के अंदर ये नहीं देख सकते. डेफिनेटली इनको देखने के लिए बहुत सारे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स किए गए, राइट जी. इनको ऑब्जर्व किया जाता है, देखा नहीं जाता. Right, like this, these are simple structures. So you can say that the structure of covalent compounds are actually simple molecular. They are simple molecular structures. These are very important for 1 mark, right? If you talk about bonding, bacho, so we know that what is the bonding between the ions over here. You need to keep remember this, that ionic compounds have strong electrostatic force of attraction. So you can say that whenever it is positive negative attraction, it is what? Strong electrostatic force of attraction. You can say that strong electrostatic force of attraction. And you need to mention over there, it is strong electrostatic force of attraction between the ions, between the opposite ions, right? You need to mention over there. ये जो आपके पास strong force of attraction है, ये between the ions है, right? And if you talk about the molecular structure, simple molecular structure, covalent bonding, so you can say that there will be weak intermolecular forces. There will be weak intermolecular forces. वहां क्या होंगी? intermolecular forces होंगी, weak intermolecular forces. Weak intermolecular forces, and this time it will be between the molecules. So you can say that weak intermolecular forces between the molecules. Now you are not allowed to write ions over here. You can write molecules over here because it is all about covalent compounds. Weak intermolecular forces between the molecules.
सर ये जो मॉलिक्यूल्स के दरमियान जो फोर्स है सर, ये किस तरह मतलब एग्जिस्ट करती है? जिस तरह इलेक्ट्रोस्टैटिक फोर्स तो समझ में आती है ना कि जो पॉजिटिव है वो मतलब नेगेटिव को कर रहा है अट्रैक्ट, लेकिन ये मॉलिक्यूलर के दरमियान क्या है जो सिनेरियो?
देखो बेटे, ऐसा होता है कि there are some powers, right? There are some powers of some elements to attract a pair of electrons toward their cells, right? For suppose अगर एक इलेक्ट्रॉन आपका शेयर है, एक इलेक्ट्रॉन मेरा शेयर है, ठीक है ना? तो आप दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन को आप कोशिश कर रहे हो कि दोनों आपकी तरफ आ जाएं, और मैं भी यही कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन्स मेरी तरफ आ जाएं, ठीक है ना? तो देयर आर द डिफरेंस ऑफ पावर. आपकी पावर अलग है खींचने की, मेरी पावर अलग है. फॉर सपोज अगर मेरी आपसे थोड़ी सी ज्यादा पावर है, सो आई कैन pull the pair of electrons towards me slightly, right?
Okay, sir.
Right. So by attracting the pair towards me slightly, I got a slight negatively charged, right? And you got a slight positive charge. So these slight charges attracts molecules towards their cells, right?
ठीक है सर.
चलें, इसको अपने पास कर लें जल्दी से बच्चों. फिर मेरे पास एक सवाल है आपको देने के लिए, आपने वो सवाल सॉल्व करके दिखाना है, राइट? हैव यू डन दिस?
Yes, sir.
Yes. चलें, now just look at over here. what I'm going to show you that NaCl's का melting point होता है आपके पास, NaCl molecules का melting point होता है आपके पास 801 degree Celsius. And if you talk about chlorine molecule, it is a very simple molecules like this. So इसका जो melting point होता है, it is minus 100 degree Celsius, right? You can see this, the melting point, the difference in melting point of these two molecules. So the question is, state and explain in terms of bonding and structure. State and explain in terms of bonding and structure why NaCl has greater melting point. Why NaCl has greater melting point. Yes. Can you do this, bacho? It is for 4 marks. I want to see that how many of you can get 4 marks in this question. Just do it and then send me so I can check your answers.